Hi folks, this is Mark Smith with Family Tree Counseling Associates. I have, I think, a special video here. I'm entitling it Narcissistic Abuse equals Inner Child Healing. This video might be a little controversial. I'm going to say things that I've said all along about the meaning and the purpose of the narcissistic abuse that we've gone through, many of us. But I just continue to grow in my understanding of my own situation. And I've sort of turned the corner on gaining internal closure and tranquility and peace, and I'd like to share that with you. I used to refer to what happened to me as my shattering, and I've referred to my shattering many times on these YouTube videos, and that's not an inappropriate way to describe what happened. I was shattered into a million pieces. Then I shifted, and as I learned more, I called it my complex PTSD, which also is exactly what it is. It's an entirely accurate description where you have this horrific PTSD in the tissues of your body, and they were caused not by warfare, but by narcissists and relationships. Then, of course, starting in December of last year, when I made the 50 symptoms of narcissistic abuse syndrome video, I started to call my condition narcissistic abuse syndrome, which I found very helpful. And I think thousands of you out there have found it very helpful. But I'm not saying any of those descriptions are inaccurate. They're all accurate. Now I have another name for what I went through, and it's more of a positive spin. It's also very accurate. And this is what I call what happened now. I call it my healing. What I went through, I needed to go through. At the core of my being, there was a little infant who had been viciously and brutally abandoned from day one. And I carried all that around in my spirit, and I didn't even know it was there. I did not know that I wasn't normal. I didn't know I didn't have a mom. I didn't know that I had ravenous inner child hunger, abandonment hunger in my innermost being. So bear with me, folks. If you've watched my videos, you know that I come from a place of truth, and I don't mean to be offensive to anybody, but here's the deal. We recruit these people. Look at your family of origin wounding and understand what happened. And that's the difficulty for many of us, is if we pick people who discard us so viciously and abandon us so abruptly, it's usually because we have really deep abandonment going back to our infancy. And if you don't know what went on in your infancy, then there's this big mystery as to why you've made choices in your adult life. I was very fortunate that my abandoning mother felt some awareness or some after having conflict with me, she recognized that I had deep rage toward her, and she wrote me this fabulous letter. And in the letter, she explained the difficulties that I had in my infancy and how we never bonded and she didn't fix it. So Mother Nature is all about healing. If I were to cut my finger, then immediately red blood platelets arrive on the scene and they begin to coagulate the blood and they begin a healing process. 2 weeks later, I don't have a cut. And Mother Nature would like to do that. Too much blue. Mother Nature would like to do that with your core being, your core pain. And the problem is, Mother Nature first supplies us with really intense psychological defense mechanisms. The shields are up. If I personally didn't have really strong defense mechanisms, I'd have been dead a long time ago. I wouldn't have lived as long as I've lived. I would have been destroyed. And that's the weird thing about severe abandonment. On the outside, you can appear to be a very strong and a very successful person. And that describes several of my siblings who haven't been in recovery, but they've been very successful financially and in positions of business and leadership because their defense mechanisms are really effective. In order for Mother Nature to heal us, though, the defense mechanisms need to come down. So Mother Nature gave you these defense mechanisms because there were 3 agenda items. Number 1, Mother Nature wants most of us, almost all of us, to survive our childhood with the least amount of damage and the least amount of insight as possible. It's all about surviving and getting the hell out of Dodge. But there is no getting the hell out of Dodge. You jump from the frying pan into the fire. So the second agenda that Mother Nature has is we become enmeshed, most of us, with people who are hidden versions of the parent who hurt us the most. And we have, for most of us, about a 7-year period of intensity and that wonderful falling in love feeling that all the songs on the radio are about and a lot of good poetry is about. But that enmeshment, that love, has a short shelf life. And when that's over, Mother Nature has accomplished what she set out to accomplish, and that is we get married, we fall in love, we get married, and we have babies. And the species gets propagated. So number 1, the defense mechanisms are there to help you survive your childhood. Number 2, you get a 7-year la-la land emotional enmeshment with somebody you fall in love with, get married, and have babies with. There's a third agenda that is rather rigorous, and that is Mother Nature wants to use a tool to dismantle our defense mechanisms and heal the deepest wounds of our childhood. So Mother Nature was searching for a tool, and this is what came up with, where you call it God or Mother Nature, and that is the attribute of the tools. Number 1, it had to be something almost everybody on the planet participates in. Almost everybody falls in love. Number 2, it had to hurt so bad that it ripped through your defenses like a knife through butter. And number 3, it had to be time delayed, because there has to be the enmeshment period where we bond, and for many of us get married and have babies. So that's the deal. What love is a reenactment of the wounding of our childhoods. So if you grow up with an abusive, self-absorbed narcissist, that's a weird background, then yeah, you're going to be cluster B snackage. You're going to attract narcissists and borderlines like moths to the flame. And you like who you like, and they like who they like. So you have an itch that needs scratched. So I've often said when I arrive into heaven, I'm going to call a meeting with the man in charge, which probably won't impress anybody. And I'll say, seriously? So I was severely destroyed and abandoned as an infant. My own mother let me sit in the yard and rage and cry, and she never got on the same wavelength with me. And then that was hidden, and then it came out, and for the past 11 years has been dominating my life and putting me through all kinds of narcissistic abuse syndrome symptoms that almost killed me. That's the plan. That's the plan. Whatever we get destroyed with growing up, that we pick, we're attracted to hidden versions of the same thing. That's the healing plan. And I know what the answer will be. You know, from a gracious God, the answer will be, yeah, that was the only plan available. You know, I really want to heal people, and the only way to do it was to use love and marriage as a can opener and as a tool that draws people to us that we need drawn to us. So what I went through with narcissistic abuse and what you went through with narcissistic abuse, it's all about your opportunity to heal the deepest wounds that you experienced in your family of origin, in your childhood. My mother, I came up with 4 ways that she wounded me. Number 1 is she didn't bond. Number 1 job of a mother is to bond with their baby. And between a surgery and her narcissism, her borderline personality disorder, and my rage, she was never able to love me past the rage and just have me be her little baby boy. And that's tragic. And the second thing she did is she didn't fix it. Another baby came along that was more appealing, and 4 more babies came along, and she really didn't care about me. She knew there was a problem, she knew there was an issue, but I was one of 7, and I didn't make waves, and I was a good, nice little boy, and I was a ticking time bomb. Number 3, my mother always lived a lie. She pretended to be my mother when she really never was. She was a too busy, self-centered person who was the object of my wrath, but she never really was my mommy. And then number 4, she used me. She used me to be the main caretaker of my infant sister when I was 10. I became my mother's emotional caretaker when I was 16 or 17. She used me financially. I was an extension of her need instead of her being there to take care of my needs. I do give her credit for writing me that letter, and it gave me a heads up as to who I was and why this bomb went off in me, and dear God, where would I be if I didn't understand why this has happened. I know there's people out there who go through severe narcissistic abuse and they really don't know what went on in their childhood, or they don't know that it's all about their childhood, and it drives them insane. It makes them bitter, and it makes them fixated on the narcissist. And I'm here to tell you that it's really not about the narcissist or the borderline. They're vile people. They're vile, disgusting, monstrous people. But the question is, why'd we pick them? It ain't 'cause they fooled us. I mean, on a conscious level, we did allow ourselves to be fooled. But in my case, I had a fake mom who gave her best love to another male, who lived a lie, who was a borderline, who used me in every way possible. And that's what love was for me. So when this con artist, sex addict, chameleon, unstable, raging borderline came along and basically agreed to be my fake girlfriend who didn't love me, who lived a lie, I was deeply in love. Mommy, give me a scrap of love. And this woman knew that I was vulnerable. She knew that I was an infantile little boy at my core, and she used it like a tool. So I found great release and peace in the concept that this was a positive experience. This is my healing. What happened to me was going to happen anyway. If I wouldn't have picked this vampirous, monstrous borderline, I'd have picked another one. And the trauma, it reflected the trauma I had as an infant. The double life, where my mom really wasn't my mom, she was just pretending. That's who I needed to pick, somebody with a double life. The discarding, I was discarded as an infant because my mother couldn't deal with my rage. It did not fit her need for narcissistic supply. I think it pissed her off. My anger just made her angry, and she turned it around and blamed it on me. What did the borderline do? She abandoned me the way my mother did. Then I showed some raw infantile rage, and then she turned it around and made me the bad guy, just the way my mother did. And then the complete lack of closure was all part of the deal. So my viewing this experience as my healing has really given me a sense of peace, and it's unhooked me from the sense of unfairness, and it's given me the power to forgive this person. When Jesus was hanging on the cross and he said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." When also in the Bible, there was a case where Joseph was sold away into slavery and to prison, and then eventually he was elevated to be the most powerful man on the planet, basically. And he forgave his brothers for selling him away into slavery and for telling his father that he was killed. And what he said was, "You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good." And these vile, horrendous, monstrous psychopaths and borderlines and histrionics and narcissists, they do mean it for evil, but God means it for good. Mother Nature wired you to attract such a person, and your demolition was planned. what I've been able to do is I used to carry a burning coal in both of my hands, and I've been able to set them down because I know that this is all about my healing. It's not about that individual. Our wounds as people who've gone through narcissistic abuse syndrome are different than most people. Our wounds, number one, are more infantile. We get abandoned at an earlier age, and so we require a more wicked and a more hurtful and a more abrupt and a more vicious abandonment than most people do. The same principle applies to normal people who are just neurotic. They're going to pick, let's say they had a critical dad, okay, they'll pick a critical spouse. Let's say they had a distant mom, okay, they'll pick a distant mom. But we primitive, primal people who pick monsters, our wounds are deeper. Our wounds are younger. And many times we've gone through extreme abuse. And what that does is it makes us completely unable to see the danger coming. We are in shark-infested waters and we're bleeding and we have a smile on our face because we don't know who we are. We've always functioned very high functioning, and we think we love this person and we have no clue the danger we are in and how vicious and how horrific that they're capable of being. So my friends, there is a plan. Mother Nature had a plan, and it is redemptive. Your pain is redemptive. My situation, it was the universe helping me complete my unfinished business with my mother in my infancy and my childhood. It really isn't about the friggin' borderline. My healing opportunity is about my business with Mother Nature. And what it has produced is a genuinely happier, more joyful, more deep, more insightful, and more discerning person than I've ever been able to be. And I don't try to be those things. They're all dividends. They're all gifts from my healing. Now, folks, I'm not trying to say you should be where I'm at. Just think about the things that I've said. It all makes sense. Your childhood is about your experience with narcissistic abusers. They are one and the same. And it's a wicked system. You know, I wish it wasn't that way, that we have to reenact something so horrible. But that's what it is. And if you're able to own it and say, you know, this is who I am. You know, some people had mommies. Some people had attachment. I didn't. Some people were left to scream in the yard unattended, hungry and disconnected and abandoned and terrified and full of rage. And you carry that around with you, and thankfully, Mother Nature had a can opener, which I engaged and selected and re-engaged over and over and over again. And I claim all this pain as a very redemptive and a positive healing that's producing wonderful things in my life and hopefully, my friends, a good message for you. Be kind with yourselves. I love you guys, and I thank you for watching. If you haven't joined our YouTube channel, join Family Tree Counseling on YouTube. And if you want to learn more about abandonment, then I've got a really good book on abandonment issues at familytreecounseling.com, and three really good videos on narcissistic abuse. let's call it our healing. Let's celebrate our healing and not over-focus on the monsters. The monsters were just stand-ins for the monsters who raised us. And we can squeeze all kinds of proactive healing and spirituality and ultimate victory and joy and thriving out of those experiences. It's arduous, wicked, hurtful, scary, traumatic, huger than words can describe experience. But as you do the work day by day and say your prayers and have your friends and do your body work and do your therapy and watch YouTube videos, you will get better and you'll be better than ever. Thank you for watching today, my friends. God bless.